And now it's time for a brief moment in hockey history with old-time hockey. The World Hockey Association was a professional ice hockey league that operated in North America from 1972 to 1979. It was the first major league to compete with the NHL since the disbandment of the Western Hockey League in 1926. The WHA capitalized on major American cities and mid-level Canadian cities with no NHL presence, and also hoped to attract players by paying more than the NHL did for player salaries. In the first year of the league's existence, 67 players jumped from the NHL to the WHA, including Hall of Famer Bobby Hull, who signed a $2.75 million contract, which was a record at the time. The WHA also started signing European players, ushering in a new era of North American hockey. The league began with 12 teams, but there were problems even before the puck dropped on their first game. With many upstart leagues, and in the NHL at the time, franchises seemed to spring up and fold or relocate mid-season. This was the case for two of the 12 original teams, the Dayton Arrows and the San Francisco Sharks. They were relocated before the season began, becoming the Houston Aeros and Quebec Nordiques respectively. The Calgary Broncos and Miami Screaming Eagles folded before the season began and were replaced by the Philadelphia Blazers and Cleveland Crusaders. The New England Whalers won the league's first championship, which was named the Avco World Championship Trophy, but the trophy was not completed, so they had to skate around the ice with the Divisional Championship, much to the embarrassment of WHA officials. The WHA had won several key victories, including a court ruling that prevented the NHL from binding players to its teams via the reserve clause. Thus, the signing of Gordie Howe and players in later years like Frank Mahovlich and Paul Henderson could be done. The new league with 12 teams did create a problem, with North America's talent pool significantly depleted. Thus, the WHA began to sign European players, which the NHL had largely ignored until then. Players such as Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nilsson of Sweden and Slovak center Vaclav Nedomanski instantly became stars in the WHA. As early as 1976, the WHA had recognized that there was a problem. Many of their franchises were teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, and with 32 teams between the NHL and WHA, hockey's professional talent pool was seriously depleted. Merger discussions were started as early as 1977, with 6 teams applying for integration into the NHL, which included Houston, Cincinnati, Winnipeg, New England, Quebec, and Edmonton. The NHL voted the merger down. It was in the final 2 seasons of the WHA that there was a debut of new superstars, some of whom would become NHL legends, including the likes of Mark Messier, Mike Liut, Mike Gartner, and a young forward from Brantford, Ontario, whose name was Wayne Gretzky, playing for the Indianapolis Racers. But by the end of the final season, only 6 teams remained in the league, facing financial difficulty and unable to meet their payroll. 4 of the 6 teams were folded into the NHL. That included the Edmonton Oilers, the New England Whalers, who were renamed the Hartford Whalers, the Quebec Nordiques, and the Winnipeg Jets. The Cincinnati Stingers and the Birmingham Bulls were folded and paid $1.5 million apiece for compensation. The NHL treated the new teams as an expansion rather than a merger, not recognizing the history of the World Hockey Association whatsoever. The legacy of the WHA has many lasting effects in the NHL. It ended the NHL's policy of paying players only a fraction of what the teams had earned. It also opened the door to European hockey players coming to North America to play professionally, and also opened up the door for US-born players to have somewhere to play. Now NHL scouts looked at home and abroad, and not just in Canada, for players to fill their rosters. The WHA also had a lasting effect on the NHL, as it was the first to introduce an overtime in regular season play. The NHL finally adopted this in 1983, whereas before, a regular season game would just end in a tie after the third period of play. Who knows what would have happened to the WHA had they lasted a few more years, with young players entering the league such as Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky, and how far they could have gone as rivals to the NHL. Perhaps we will never know. And this has been a brief moment of hockey history.